I think for me, I would look at that from a macro level and then a micro level. Do I believe in the plan? Do I believe in the pathway at the macro level? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think anybody who would sit here today and say that at the micro level that this is going the way we want, they wouldn't be telling the truth. Essentially, I'm bitterly disappointed, as we all are, and incredibly frustrated, to be honest with you, at the results that we've had this year, at the position we are in the league at this point in time. I don't think it's an accurate reflection of the talent that we've got in that locker room. And it certainly is not where we want to be. And I think with that comes the necessity to really take stock and to make some difficult decisions. We've got to look at this holistically and kind of examine what exactly is needed to get us back on track. And I think as we look back now, 2021 needs to be the standard. That needs to be the standard at which we accept nothing else. And quite clearly, we're not there this year. We weren't there last year either. Anytime we miss out in the playoffs, that's not what we want. That's not where we want to be. Obviously, we missed out by 4 points last year, but to be as far off the pace as we are right now, albeit still in with a shot, and I think that's a very important thing, but we are clearly not where we want to be. So we are going to take stock of that. We have been. We're going to make the difficult decisions that are needed to get us back on the pathway. But from an overall perspective, in terms of the type of club that we want to have, the standards that we're going to set, the demanding nature that we're going to impose, I still believe in the pathway, and I still firmly believe in the plan to get us there. But no, this year has not been good enough. It's not been acceptable. And that's something that we are very, very motivated to rectify immediately.
Is it working? Okay, there. Pádraig, Matt Pollard, Burgundy Wave. Paragraph 4, sentence 2 of the Rapids Way reads, quote, "We must also be held accountable when things are not going the way they should," end quote. I think fair to say from your last answer, 2023 has not gone the way that it should. When that was written, where was that meant for the accountability to come from, and what does that accountability look like right now?
Yeah, I think I love that. I love anything that's going to come from the Rapids Way. I think we're coming up on the 6th anniversary of the Rapids Way at this point in time, and I think it's easy to look at that as a particular moment in time, but of course it's not. It's meant to be an overarching piece that looks at the type of club that we're going to be and how we're going to perform. And the success that we had in the latter half of 2019, 2020, and 2021 obviously came hot on the heels of the Rapids Way and the changes that we made starting in the offseason, really 2018. And building that group out, bringing in the likes of the Diego Rubios, Keegan Rosenberry, Jack Price, many other players that formed the backbone of the success of that team. When we look at it now, the accountability is there for all of us. It has to be there for all of us. And I think the difficult decisions that we need to make now and that we've already started to make, they are tough, but they're necessary. And I think that's it. And as I said, back in 2019, I see a lot of similarities to that in terms of, when I went into that group in 2019 and said, this isn't an 0-7-2 team, I firmly believed that. I really did. And I think they quickly showed that they weren't an 0-7-2 team. And I think that's what we're looking at now. Is I don't think the record this team has or the position they have in the league is reflective of the talent that's there. So I think what we've got to do is understand what's driving that. I had a long chat with the senior players, and we've got a kind of a senior leadership player group. I had a long chat with them on Friday, and we kind of talked about the standards that we need to drive here at the club and the demanding nature that we need to really ensure is there. And we talked about getting back to that. I think I spoke the last time we chatted, I spoke about the St. Louis game and how disappointing that was for me. And that was really, what I meant by that was the approach on the field in terms of the attitude and what we saw. And I didn't think we matched St. Louis for some things that I would consider to be base level requirements. The effort wasn't there, the urgency, the intensity, the boldness wasn't there. These are the hallmarks of what made this team so talented and so good in 19, 20, and 21. And they're the fundamentals that we need to get back to. So when you talk about accountability, we all have to look at the role that we have in this. And ultimately, we have to make some tough decisions as we move along through this. So Obviously, if I'm saying that it's not acceptable, we're going to make changes. We are going to make changes. That started with some of the moves that we've made in this window. Obviously, we've brought quite a few players in, but we've also moved on from some players, and there will obviously be more to come in the off season as well. This is going to be, to a large extent, a transition. There's a lot of players who've been here for quite some time. Now, they've got 11 games to go this year, and 11 games is still a lot of time for us to do a lot in this league. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. But we're certainly not going to rest until we're back where we want to be.
What feedback are you getting from Josh right now?
What feedback am I getting from Josh? Look, we were with Josh in DC, and I think he's the same as us. He wants to win. So we've got to make sure that we're making the necessary adjustments to put ourselves in a position to do that.
I wanted to go to just one thing that was in that same Rapids way, as well as something that you said here. So in that, a big part of that was attack-minded, forward-thinking players. You guys are last in the league in goals scored. Fans at home have been subjected to a number of 0-0 draws. You're seeing the feedback of people who are losing interest within the club because of the experience, because of the type of play. And then you say, we want to get back to where we were in 2021. You haven't won and advanced in MLS Cup. This team hasn't achieved the goals that were set forth in that. So under what metrics, other than a Western Conference title, would you say that you've achieved that goals? And do you think that you're giving fans the type of product that you said, and that the club is investing to get that type of offensive product?
There's a few different questions in there, so I'm going to kind of parse them out. I think, what we talked about in the Rapids way was that we wanted to play an attacking and entertaining style of football, and that we wanted to target very particular types of players. So players that had, high-level soccer IQ, and players ultimately that played with urgency, intensity, and boldness. That's what we talked about. Now, I think from a goal scored perspective, I'm a big believer, obviously, in the numbers and looking and using statistics where possible to kind of evaluate what's going on. I think you look at that over a wide period of time to get a true sense of what is happening. Now, I think, going back 2019, 2020, 2021, we were consistently in the top 10, whether it was goals scored or expected goals scored. So that was going quite well. Obviously, you can't finish top of the West if you're not producing good football. And I don't think anybody who watched us then would have been unhappy with the style of football and the entertainment that was on offer at that point in time. Even this year, if you look at it as disappointing and frustrating as it's been, we've underperformed our expected goal metrics by some distance, but we are still in a relatively good spot from an expected goals perspective. We just haven't finished. We haven't done the most important thing, which is put the ball in the back of the net. And obviously that's why we've gone out and brought in a DP striker at the 9 position, and we're incredibly excited to see how he goes. It doesn't help, obviously, when you lose Diego Rubio for pretty much the entirety of the season. He contributed 16 goals last year, 6 assists as well. So a huge part of your attacking threat. And I think we see that in this league, right? We understand that, in 21, when Carlos Vela was injured for LAFC, they missed the playoffs. In 2022, Pricey was out for us and we missed the playoffs. Gail Kinda was out and Polito was out for Kansas and they missed the playoffs. Shea Paulo was out for Seattle and they missed the playoffs. In a salary cap league, missing, one of your key players, one of your top players is a tough blow. It's difficult in a salary cap league. So missing Diego Rubio this year was a real tough blow for us. And I think that's borne out in the fact that we've underperformed the expected goals numbers, but the expected goals numbers are still there, so I do think there is still attacking intent. Is it where we want it to be? Absolutely not, absolutely not. And I think that's very important that, again, we put the emphasis on ourselves to rectify that. The attackers are well aware of that. They don't need reminding that they're not finishing some of these chances. But I do think as we look into the last 11 games of the season, Diego coming back, Navajo coming in, that's pretty important. You're adding 2 very potent weapons to your strike force there. So I would like to think that we're going to improve greatly in that area in the second half, or the final third of the season, I would say.
With the roster basically being now set for the season for 2023, how would you grade yourself in terms of putting the team together, putting it on the field? Any missed opportunities or maybe moves that you point to as a big success?
Yeah, I think as we look at it, when you plan out the course of the season, you obviously have the roster in full in mind. And I think, again, that's something that's been difficult to fully judge this year. I think Jack Price was, just a couple of minutes into the game against Minnesota, obviously, when he came on, that he tore his Achilles. That's a devastating blow. I mean, he'd been our MVP 4 out of the 5 years he'd been here, and then obviously missed last year, which is why he probably wasn't then. So to lose him was a real blow. And then losing Diego as well, for both of them to be out was a challenge. I think as we looked at it, the aim, we certainly had our focus on adding a couple of players in the summer window. And I think what we didn't, or what certainly hasn't gone to plan, was the fact that we are not as close to contention as we wanted, needed, and expected to be. So we felt that the group coming in now would have been adding to that, and would have been improving on the position that we're in. So while we're obviously thrilled to be able to bring in the players that we did, Gutman, Illich, Navajo, and Tavares, we're disappointed that we're adding those on to a team that isn't where it needs to be in the standings right now and in the rankings. So that is incredibly challenging. There were a couple of other moves as well in the summer that didn't quite end up getting done. We had a deal agreed for an attacking player out of the championship in England who unfortunately didn't pass his medical. And then I think it's been kind of widely reported we had a deal agreed with Caden Clark as well. And just unfortunately the paperwork coming back from Germany on the last day, it wasn't possible to get that registered. While the window itself is closed, free agents are still available, and we are still actually active at the moment in discussions with a couple of players with a view to coming back in. I think, Mitch, one of the key things here as I reflect on the season is the injuries, and I'm very quick to parse those out, right? There's things you can control and there's things you can't control. It's not possible for us to control Jack Price, rupturing his Achilles, or the fact that Diego needed knee surgery and then work on his back as well. But I do look at the muscular injuries that we suffered this year, and that was troubling to me, greatly troubling to me, because if you look back at 20 and 21, I'm not sure we suffered a muscular injury all year. And I think, there's the old saying about the best ability is availability. And obviously when you build a squad, you build a roster, it is important that they're all available, because that's how you get the strength of that roster and the benefit from that roster. So we've taken a deep dive at that. I think many of you will know Steve Tashian from his time, obviously, with the US men's national team, but obviously he was with Greg Berhalter in Columbus and was with Everton in the Premier League before. We recently brought Steve in as a consultant to do a full deep dive review on the performance and medical areas, to make sure that we were leaving no stone uncovered in terms of making sure that we were doing what was right and what was needed to put our players in the best position to succeed on a Saturday night and to be available for a Saturday night. So that's something that is ongoing at the moment. Again, with the aim ultimately of ensuring that we do have a full roster to look at, because that's the critical thing. If you're putting a roster together, but you've only got 3/4 of it or less available at any point in time, then it's very difficult to get the most out of that roster. So that's been very important to us to tackle that and to make sure that that's put in a good place.
And then you mentioned we are, it's a definitive statement of we are going to make changes. There will be changes. That was in reference to roster building, but how wide will that scope be? Are you talking front office, coaching, and sort of what will that process look like over the last 11 games?
Yeah, look, I'm not happy with anything right now. I'm really not, and I think it's important, for us to reflect on everything and make sure that we're reviewing everything. I think this starts with the standards. This starts with getting us back on track with the plan that we had put in place originally, which led to the success. So I would say there's a keen awareness and acknowledgement in terms of we know how to build this. And I think coming out of 21, it was very frustrating in hindsight that, look, you're going to lose good players. When you're a good team, you're going to lose good players. I think that's natural. We lost the likes of an Austin Trusty and a Sam Vines, two of the top young talents in this league. And, they're doing tremendously well now in Europe. But it's a hard thing to replace that type of player. So I look at Austin's example, in particular. We brought in two of the top young left-footed centre-back prospects in this league in Gustavo and Buba. Kate is just incredibly unfortunate, tears his ACL a couple of weeks into training. So he hasn't been able to kind of showcase the talent that's there. And we're thrilled that he's been getting back to full fitness, playing games with the second team. We've obviously had a terrific year and clinched the playoffs last night. Gus didn't work out to the same level that we had hoped, and he's now with Columbus picking up some minutes there. So that's a challenge, and we weren't able to replace Austin at the level that we wanted. The same could be said about Sam. You're losing a US international, one of the best, if not the best, left back in the league. We've brought in a very talented young player in Lucas. Wasn't quite the right fit. I think on the field brought a lot of good things, in particular defensively, but wasn't the right fit for us as a club. We now feel with Andrew that we've put ourselves in a good spot, but we have to do a better job of replacing the top talent. That's not easy, right? When you lose, a 24-year-old or a 23-year-old centre back at the time who's left-footed, 6'3" and can play, that is a challenge. And that's what we've got to make sure we're doing. The important thing for me when it comes to this now is getting back to the fundamentals. Getting back to the basics of what made us good. Look, we've got a huge advantage here in terms of playing at altitude, and I think we've got to make sure that the game is a quick game here. We've got to make sure that the ball and play time here is of the highest level, and right now it's not. It's at the lowest level, and we're playing too slow. We need to play quicker. We need to do the things that helped us win in 2021. Again, we've had good success from an expected perspective on set pieces, but we've not taken the chances. We need to get back to that. But I do think it's very important for us to return to what made us the team we were in 19, 20, and 21, and to acknowledge the things that haven't gone so well since then and make sure that we're changing those and making the adjustments that we need. So yeah, there will be changes. Everything is going to be looked at. We're not going to leave any stone unturned to get back to where we want to be.
Yeah, just what do you think of Rafael's first minutes in a Rapids jersey, and what are you making of his progression right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's always interesting to watch a player come in. He'd obviously been in the Palmeiras squads for the last few weeks while we were talking to them and trying to finalize the deals. But because we were so involved in those negotiations, he wasn't getting minutes. So he hadn't played in a little bit, even though he was training and on the roster for them. So I think it's been great for him. I think when he came off at halftime, his numbers were good in terms of distance covered, the high intensity distance covered, which is what we expected from him. He was that was his first real go at a game setting at altitude, which is always good to get that under your belt and to have that. He was excited. We were excited to see him. He got 2 goals in a scrimmage on Sunday, an inter-squad scrimmage, which was, again, good for him to just get more minutes at altitude and in this environment. I think he's exactly what we hoped. He is the prototypical number 9, I think, for this league. He can, he's goal dangerous. He's constantly looking to get into the box. He's constantly looking to get in good positions to finish things. He can run in behind. He can come to feet. You can play him as a target guy because of his size and strength. And he's just a great character as well. He works incredibly hard, which is something we've seen all throughout his career in Brazil. And there's been no let up in that since he got here. So incredibly excited to see it in MLS action. But so far, I think he's fit in incredibly well into the group.
Pádraig, on the other side of that, not just on the field performances, but the entire process from first scouting Navajo to now to getting him minutes and bringing him in, dealing through the visa process. What has been your impression of just the club's entire mindset when bringing over a player of such high level and really making it a seamless process as possible?
Yeah, he was a very interesting one because obviously you're talking about a DP. It was the same thing really for the player who in the end failed the medical. They are long-term processes. They're not things that just happen overnight. And I think it is one of those things where you get a little bit more insight and pulling behind or looking behind the curtain, so to speak. This has been in the works for a long, long time with both the club in terms of Palmeiras and then Navajo himself. It's something that when you're looking at the potential to invest that kind of a transfer fee in the player, you want to do as much due diligence work as you can possibly do. So it's not just about the analytics, it's not just about the scouting, it's about actually going and trying to learn more about the player. We spoke to a number of teammates of his, one in particular who gave great insight that we knew very well. And that was important for us to gain a better understanding of exactly who he was and how we felt he would fit into the team. One of the things, and sometimes it's small things that give you a sense of the player's commitment to this, but his desire to start learning English as quickly as he did was very important. You know, how much he was pushing for this and wanting to be here as well was very important. I think we're fortunate that, you know, we've got a good staff there that are quite skilled at this point in time in terms of obtaining, whether it's P1 visas or green cards, etc., and moving through the immigration process. That goes quite well. So, you know, from start to finish with this one, it wasn't the easiest negotiations in the world. And I'll give huge credit to Fran and the scouting group. But, you know, in terms of the ability to negotiate down from the, you know, the initial ask at Palmeiras and find something that worked for everybody, I think was good. And I think this puts, you know, us, the player, and Palmeiras in the best possible position. And I'm very excited just to see him get in. Like it's the best thing for us is when you go and do all the work behind the scenes, and then when the player gets here, it's exactly what you would expect and exactly what you had hoped. So now we've got to see that work on the field as well. But so far it's been very good.
Pádraig, what would success look like for Tavares? I don't know, you put a little Portuguese accent on there that maybe I'm not familiar like I am with Rafael. For the two loan players with options to buy, what does success look like for them that makes you want to pick up their option in June, July next year? And then given the injury bug that we've seen with Diego and with Jack this season, what does success look like for them to where you would want them back in 2024?
Believe you me, Matt, anyone who spent time with me knows I'm not going to put a Portuguese accent on anything successfully. So I think there's a strategic approach here that we take with these loan deals. The amount of money that we're looking to invest, whether it's in Tavares or Navarro, you know, it's a major commitment. And I think this speaks volumes for where the league has gone now. You know, that loan deals are obviously something that are quite common in world soccer. They may not have been as common here, but as more and more players want to come to the United States and want to play in MLS, they are easier to do. Like in the past, whether it was, you know, the Gashi deal was set up obviously as a loan deal. And in the end, he was like, no, I'm only coming if it's a permanent deal. Now you see more and more players willing to do that. I think it's very important for us because we do place such a level of importance on the character and the mentality of the individual that we want to see how they integrate with the group. They need to be the right fit for the club as well as just good players. So I think from that perspective, having those players on loans is really important in terms of, to a certain extent, de-risking the investment, because it is a substantial investment that we're making there. I think for Tavares, an incredibly athletic player, covers a ton of ground, and technically excellent, you know, really excellent. And look, you don't get to play any minutes in the Premier League if you do not have, you know, real qualities. What we wanted to see here, and I think what will ultimately determine his success, is that mentality and that drive. We want to be a team, I'm going to keep reiterating it, you know, we want to be a team that plays with urgency, with intensity, and then with boldness. I don't think the boldness is going to be an issue for him at all, but we need to see him come over here and show the level of urgency and intensity that we feel is going to be needed to get us back to where we need to get to. So if he comes in and shows that, then I think his natural talents will ensure that he's a really good performer in this league. And that's going to be critical there. For Navarro, I think, look, nobody could question his intensity and his urgency. You just have to watch him play at all, and you see that in the game film. I think for us, it's making sure that, because that is I think, again, it's been well publicized what the transfer fee will be on that. That would be, you know, a club record fee. So it's something we want to be very, very certain of. The best way to do that is to see him here, to see him in action. Like, we think he has all the attributes to be a top performer and a top number 9 in this league. We now get the chance to see that over the next 12 months and make sure that he fits in with the group and succeeds. Ultimately, for a 9, it's very simple, right? It's goals. You know, we spoke about that in the earlier question, that, you know, we We've underperformed our expected goals number to a significant level this year. I believe we're top in the league in that unwanted metric, I would say. But to have a number 9 who can come in and finish those chances and help spearhead the attack is critical. So that's what we're looking for there. That would be success in that regard. Diego and Jack, I mean, they're different, right? Diego's back now, so Diego's going to be able to play in the remaining games, touch wood. So he's back in good shape. He's had a few weeks since our last game, so he's able to actually get some training minutes under his belt. He got 30 minutes or 45 minutes against Houston last week for the second team. So again, for Diego, it's two things, right? It's staying healthy and staying on the field and trying to see that he can get back to the form that he had last year, where he was one of the most dangerous attackers in the league, playing in that, what do you want to call it, attacking midfield, second striker, whatever you want to call it. But, 16 goals and 6 assists or 7 assists, like that's an incredible return, and obviously something we've missed greatly this year. So for him getting back on the field and showing that type of form is going to be critical. Jack's a little bit different, an Achilles injury. That's as tough an injury as you can get. I remember talking to Connor Casey about that. He tore his as a player. It's a tough road back, it really is. But I think what we're seeing now is that more and more players come back from that in good shape. And I think that's a good thing. I think last year you looked at Brad Guzan, Miles Robinson, there's Aaron Long. I know Jack had a long chat with Aaron after the game against LA here, where they talked about, what it takes to get back. I don't know if you're going to find a more determined individual than Jack Price. He is fully committed to getting back onto the field. I think one of the good things for us, we're going to do an extensive medical on Jack. In many ways, this could have been, there's never good timing, but Jack obviously last year suffered with the broken ribs, punctured kidney, had hamstring, had calf injuries, had a number of issues that he was dealing with, hip and groin as well. So this may have actually given him the opportunity for everything to kind of get a little bit of a break and for him to recuperate a lot of minor injuries, which people may not be as aware of, but which are, a real challenge for him when you play with the level of intensity that he plays with. So we're gonna continue to work with Jack. He's been such a big part of our success over the years here. So we'll continue to work with him and see where he is as we go into next season.